What is up, Bleacher Report? Jesse here with Last Second Sports. Back at you with another 49ers Daily. Man, the last time we talked, Bleacher Report, the offseason was just starting to heat up. I told you this was going to be the craziest free agency period we may have ever seen, and I think it lived up to the billing. However, I don't know that it lived up to the billing for San Francisco 49er fans, and I totally understand some of the frustration. Let's go back to the scouting combine when we started to hear rumblings about John Lynch or from John Lynch that maybe the purse strings were going to be tightened up a little bit. He started talking about cash and not spending money, not from a salary cap standpoint, but from a Jed York doesn't want to waste his money anymore. Then articles started coming out, and then we saw a Deebo Samuel trade. We saw some other corresponding moves like Javon Hargrave that kind of showed, hey, you know what? We regret some of these bigger deals. Let's get out from under them. So then free agency starts, and you see more player movement. You see guys like Malik Collins and Leonard Floyd get cut. Joey Bosa rumors. It looked like he was going to come here. And then you start to see that the 49ers really don't bring in a lot of names. In fact, almost no names really. And so the panic starts to set in, the hysteria. What is going on? Man, I don't care if Jed York saves money. This team is going to be garbage. A lot of different emotions start to come to play. And so I just wanted to go through it. Let's go through every move that has happened over the last week or so and talk about it. Let's see if there are some mistakes that the 49ers made, because the 49ers certainly lost some players. I mean, we're talking about some big names. Maybe not, some of them weren't such big names, but these guys are getting paid by other teams. So obviously there's some talent there, and the 49ers are losing out on it, whether it's starting level talent, whether it's backup talent. And this is a team that I think most people would say, hey, they can't afford to lose talent. They were already 6-11. Not only that, but you're watching other teams around you get better, like the Rams and the Cardinals. Seahawks is debatable, but the Commanders are getting better. The Vikings potentially are getting better. The Packers. So it's really hard to sit back and watch this happen and think, man, I can't be optimistic about this season. Like, there's no way watching all of this. But I think that there should be some optimism. So let's go through step by step, move by move, what has happened, not in chronological order, but just by the distinction of what has happened. So first of all, the 49ers did make one trade. They traded Deebo Samuel. We knew that was coming a little over a week ago. It just was waiting to be finalized once the new league season started, which was yesterday. So Deebo Samuel traded for a 5th-round pick to the Washington Commanders. We knew that was coming. Now, some of these cuts, I think, are a little bit surprising. We knew about Javon Hargrave. We knew he was no longer going to be a part of this team. But Kyle Juszczyk got cut. Now, I think we knew that there was a chance that was going to happen. Just based off of last year, the 49ers asked him to take a pay cut. He did that. We pretty much knew that that ask was going to come again, and it all came down to what did Kyle Juszczyk want to do. And it sounds like Kyle Juszczyk wasn't willing to take the pay cut again. He was sent stepping, and he might end up with the Pittsburgh Steelers. We'll see. That's the visit that he's had thus far. But Kyle Juszczyk is out of the building. Now, I think two names here, Malik Collins and Leonard Floyd. I think these ones kind of surprise people. Malik Collins had a pretty good year for the 49ers. He played all year. He was healthy. That's number one. We can't say that about a lot of San Francisco 49ers. There wasn't a lot of health going around in 2024. Malik Collins was healthy, and he was productive. Now, it's also true that Malik Collins is not a starter in this league. He should not be your starter. But for depth, man, I think that's a piece that most 49er fans had hoped that they were going to keep. And out of nowhere, he got cut. He was immediately picked up, by the way. So, that shows you that probably a pretty good player here. And I think the other one that threw people for a loop was Leonard Floyd. Now, when it happened, the timing of which it happened was like, all right, well, Joey Bosa, there's been rumors that Joey Bosa wants to play with Nick and the family wants this to happen. We've been hearing this for a few years, and here's the opportunity to do so. We hear that the 49ers and the Miami Dolphins are the only teams that are involved in this. And then all of a sudden, Leonard Floyd gets cut about the time that Bosa should be making his decision. And so outsiders start to think, we're like, hey, clearly this is because Joey Bosa's on his way. And so there's no point in having both of them, although I think having both makes a ton of sense. Either way, you could see why the 49ers would move on potentially from Floyd if you've got Bosa coming in. And then boom, news breaks. Joey Bosa going to the Buffalo Bills. Where did they come from? Well, sounds like Buffalo made a late push, offered more money than these other teams did, and ultimately were able to land Joey Bosa. Maybe part of that is because they were close to a Super Bowl. He wants to win a Super Bowl, I'm sure, at this stage in his career. So I think multiple things played into it. But losing out on Floyd with Joey Bosa coming in does make a little bit of sense. Losing out on Floyd with Joey Bosa not coming in, I don't know that that one makes sense. And so I would say this is like the one move that I really look at this offseason and say, I don't know if I understand that one. I don't, because you push the money to post June 1st as well. The 49ers have a league leading $86 million in dead cap this year. So the thought is, hey, if you're going to get rid of these players, you might as well just add to that total, take it on the chin for the year, clear up the cap space next year, and be good to go. But with the recent cuts and Malik Collins and Leonard Floyd and Javon Hargrave, because they're post June 1st moves, that now carries over a dead cap of around 21 million into next year. And that I'm not necessarily a fan of. So the Leonard Floyd one is like the move that doesn't make a ton of sense to me. Tabor Pepper, right before this show, a couple hours ago or so, we learned that long snapper Tabor Pepper is also no longer going to be a part of this team. In fact, they've already replaced him. We'll get to that in a bit. But that one was kind of surprising as well. Tabor Pepper, not going to be a part of the 49ers. I don't think many long snappers get talked about or even known, but Tabor Pepper is very well known in this community for multiple reasons. Obviously, famously was shoved or grabbed by the throat by Deebo Samuel, but also he's very active on social media, and he's one of the few long snappers in the league that has made a name for himself outside of just playing football through gaming and what have you. But Tabor Pepper no longer a part of the 49ers, in case you had not known that. Now, the players that left in free agency, I don't know if any of these were a surprise. Josh Dobbs, we knew was not going to come back. Even if the 49ers wanted him back, it was clear he didn't want to be back. He felt like he won the second string job last year. He was not given that. So he's moved on. Jalen Moore got paid way more than I think most people expected. He might be a starting tackle now for the Kansas City Chiefs. And it's kind of crazy to me. I kind of go back and forth on this one because Jalen Moore, I think, is a good player. I think Jalen Moore, what's interesting about him is that when he was drafted, Kyle Shanahan at that press conference, the draft press conference, talked about how he saw him playing guard. Well, he hasn't played guard at all in the NFL. He's only been a swing tackle for the 49ers. And he's been a little bit up and down, but last year when he played, he actually looked pretty good filling in for Trent Williams. So he leaves in free agency, probably a bit of an overpay, or at least that's what I would think. But when Kansas City's the team that's paying him, it makes me question: did we let a really good one get out the door? I don't know. We'll see how it works out for Jalen Moore. I wish him the best. But not only does he go to the Kansas City Chiefs, but Elijah Mitchell as well. Again, no surprise here. Elijah Mitchell, we knew was not coming back. Aaron Banks goes to the Green Bay Packers, got a massive payday. There's no way that any of us thought that that was going to be matched by the 49ers. So him leaving is not a surprise. Talanoa Hufanga, I think a lot of people early on had hoped that he might come back. But Talanoa Hufanga as we started getting closer and closer to free agency, it was very clear he was not going to be back. Nobody talked about him from the 49ers side of the house as if there was any chance that he would be back. The one player that people had hoped was going to come back was Dre Greenlaw. We'll get to him in a second. So Talanoa Hufanga ends up with the Denver Broncos. Charvarius Ward ends up with the Colts. Everybody knew he was not going to come back. I think we would all welcome him back. He's one of the few free agents that we would all genuinely want to have back. But we know everything that happened on a personal level for him. It was clear he was not going to be back. So there's no surprise there. And then Dre Greenlaw. This was the one. I think this is the one that stung. I think a lot of people really hoped Dre Greenlaw would be back. My prediction for Dre Greenlaw was that they were going to offer him a 1-year deal. It sounds like that's exactly what they did. But that he would get 3 years, 30 million, around 20 million fully guaranteed on the open market. And he got even more than that. By the time that free agency had actually opened, the legal tampering period, because so many guys had signed already to stay with their teams, it was like Dre Greenlaw and one other decent linebacker on the open market. That other linebacker got signed extremely quick, and it was just Dre Greenlaw by himself waiting to be signed. And so it became pretty clear that linebacker needy teams were going to pay Dre Greenlaw. The number went up from even what I thought it was going to be. And he lands with the Denver Broncos on a 3-year, $35 million deal, something like 24 million fully guaranteed. So I hope Dre Greenlaw continues to have a great career. And this is the one that stings the most. But I think also knowing that he is coming off the major injury, you can understand why the 49ers may not be super excited about bringing Dre Greenlaw back on a multi-year contract, especially the way that they've talked about how they want to get younger. They don't want to regret these deals. They want to get healthier. These are conversations that you've heard. So I don't know that Dre Greenlaw necessarily fits that mold, but him not coming back certainly is a big blow. I do understand that. Now, the players that they lost, when you go step by step and player by player, you can justify why each one of them left the building and you can understand why. But when you take the totality of them leaving the building, that is a lot of players, a lot of names that we've grown accustomed to, a lot of players who over the years have contributed in a massive, massive way. I mean, Elijah Mitchell, the 2020, what was it, the 2021 season? I mean, without him, when Mostert went down, where would the 49ers be, right? But he hasn't been able to stay healthy for a few years, so we understand why he's gone. I mean, Aaron Banks got drafted by the 49ers. He's been a part of these deep runs. Dre Greenlaw, Charvarius Ward, Talanoa Hufanga, we know all of them have contributed. And so when you look at the lump sum, it's like, wow, that is jarring. That's a lot of players that have helped this team over the years. And then I think what is jarring really for people is that the 49ers seemingly, at least thus far, have not really restocked the cupboard, right? They haven't done that yet. And so, oh, another player I forgot to mention, Isaac Yiadom. He went back to the Saints. So the 49ers haven't restocked things. And I think that that is the most jarring part of this. When you look at the guys that have come back, I think people are disappointed. First signing they make, they wait like a whole day. Luke Farrell, Jacksonville Jaguars. I got to be honest. I watch a lot of NFL, a lot of football. I'm quad boxing it every single Sunday. There's not a lot of football I don't see. But man, some of these names, I'm like, I don't even know who they are. I don't know who they are. And that is hard. Like when you start fooling the biggest of fans and you start pulling backup players from bad organizations, it's a little dicey. So when your first signing is Luke Farrell after everything that's gone on, after you lose out on Joey Bosa, I didn't want Joey Bosa to be here, but some people did. After you miss out on Joey Bosa, after all of those other players leave, and this is what you come to the table with, I think it's pretty jarring for 49er fans. So they bring in Luke Farrell. He's a blocking tight end. They've clearly been trying to get that guy on the roster for a while. He comes in. They then bring in Richie Grant from the Falcons, Luke Gifford from the Titans, Demarcus Robinson. I think this is probably one of their better signings. Really good, not a really good player. I don't want to overhype it. He's a good player. He's a good serviceable player. He's a starting level player if he's like your wide receiver 3 in this league. He comes from the McVay system, so we definitely know he likes to block. He's a good blocker, a willing blocker. That's a must in the Shanahan system, right? And so, good signing. He's made it to the playoffs every year of his career. He's played for the Chiefs. He's played for the Rams, so he's won Super Bowls as well. Good player. Good player. Good signing. Now, the downside to Demarcus Robinson is that he does have this pending DUI. We don't know exactly what's going to happen with that. We assume a suspension is going to come. Could that be 1 game? Could that be 2 games or 4 games? We don't know. And I think that's the downside. When they first signed him, that's the first thing that I mentioned is like, this guy is going to get suspended most likely. And if that's the case, I mean, what are you doing here? But overall, I mean, if he's with your team for the next season or 2, you've added a good player. He's certainly an upgrade over some of the other wide receivers that have been here over the last couple of years that haven't been getting a lot of playing time. He's an upgrade. He's a player. He had 7 touchdowns last year, over 500 yards. His best season. He's 31, or he's going to be 31 this year, so it's not like he's young, but he's better than Conley, right? Like if the option is him or Conley, give me Demarcus Robinson. This is a no-brainer for me. They bring in Jason Pinnock, safety from the Giants. He's started for them quite a bit over the last couple of years. Hasn't been the greatest by any means, but he has been a starter in this league. They do need safety help. They also bring in Trey Brown from the Seahawks. He's been a spot starter, starter for them at times. More of an outside corner, even though he's got a smaller frame, or at least that's what he's played. I was talking to some people who have watched him since he came out of college, and they believe that he would probably benefit from being a nickel corner. They feel like his frame fits it better, his style of play fits it better. I reached out to a friend that covers the Seahawks. He disagrees with that. He thinks he's more of a pure outside corner. So we'll see. What is the vision from Robert Saleh? That I'm not quite sure of, but I'm sure he's got a vision for Trey Brown potentially. And then most recently, they signed John Weeks. He is the new long snapper for the 49ers. He's 39 years old. He's played his whole career with the Texans. And long snappers can play. They can play into their early 40s. They're a lot like kickers. They don't really get touched. They're snap the ball. That's all they really do. And so he is the Tabor Pepper replacement. And then the one guy that has come with a lot of controversy is Mac Jones. And there was some late breaking news last night. He signed with the San Francisco 49ers. This one's interesting for so many reasons. Mac Jones, there's still a lot of people that believe that it was him that Kyle Shanahan wanted, not Trey Lance in the 2021 draft. And you can understand why. I mean, I think he fits more the style of quarterback that Kyle Shanahan covets. Rumor also came out that the 49ers were in on trading for him last offseason. Obviously, they didn't get it done. They didn't offer enough. He ended up with the Jacksonville Jaguars. And now that he's a free agent, here he is. He signed it not a 1-year deal, but a 2-year deal with the 49ers. And so a lot of questions start coming up. What does this mean for Brock Purdy? Is there going to be a competition? Are they not going to sign Brock Purdy? And this whole thing with Brock Purdy has become very complicated. This was supposed to be an easy cut and dry deal. You got your franchise quarterback. You know what other guys are making. You know the ceiling. You know the floor. Meet in the middle. Come to an agreement. We're done. 49ers want to get it done early. Brock Purdy wants to get it done early. You were able to do that with Jimmy Garoppolo, the last quarterback that you thought was your franchise guy. This will be easy. You can start negotiating as soon as week 18 ends in January. This thing will be done by March. Well, not so fast. No deal is imminent. Everybody that's talking about this deal all of a sudden talks about how complicated it is. And, is it the length of the deal? Is it that 49ers want 3 years and Brock Purdy and his team want 5 years? Is it the AAV? Is it the structure? I mean, there's so much that goes into it. And now people are saying, well, if it does get done, it'll happen in May. And then boom, in the middle of all this talk, enters Mac Jones into the chat a guy that has been coveted for many years by Kyle Shanahan. And so all of a sudden, people think this might complicate things. And I think to a degree, there is something to that. I don't think this is going to stop negotiations with the 49ers and Brock Purdy. I don't think that this means that the 49ers have soured on Brock Purdy in any fashion. I don't think that this means that they don't want him to be the starter moving forward. I don't think this means a deal doesn't get done. I think what it does mean, though, is that if a deal does not get done and Brock Purdy were to hold out, the 49ers are now comfortable with the option of Mac Jones if it gets that ugly. That's one thing it does say. What it also says is the 49ers have not been happy with their backup quarterbacks, or they at least weren't last year. They clearly wanted to get Mac Jones last year as well. And that if Brock Purdy has to miss a couple games, they're comfortable with Mac Jones. Completely comfortable with Mac Jones. So comfortable, in fact, that he didn't get a 1-year deal. He got a 2-year deal. So I think those are the things that it says, but it does apply a little pressure, right? I mean, think about it from Brock Purdy's standpoint. You're in these negotiations. By all intents and purposes, it sounds like these negotiations haven't been contentious by any means, but you've been unable to come to a deal. The agreement's not there yet, and enters Mac Jones, who you know that Kyle Shanahan likes. I don't, listen, I don't think that Brock Purdy is worried by any means, but I'm sure that it makes him a little. He's thinking twice about it at the very least. I'm sure it's not ideal for the Brock Purdy camp, but I don't think it's the end of the world. I think everything that was going to happen, whether a deal gets done or doesn't get done, was going to happen anyways. What's meant to be will be. And at the very least, it sounds like this deal is going to take some time, even if it gets done. And Mac Jones entering into the conversation is not going to change that one way or another. There's not going to be a QB competition, nothing like that. This deal doesn't now all of a sudden not get done because Mac Jones is here. But it does give the 49ers a little confidence if things get contentious that they can move forward with Mac Jones and feel decent about it. All right, players that have come back: Curtis Robinson, Patrick Taylor. Curtis Robinson's interesting. He showed some flash for sure. The linebacker position, this is now clearly a position of need. They've got D. Winters. Curtis Robinson's now back. He's a pretty good player, or at least shows that he can be a good player. So that's much needed depth. Patrick Taylor's back. They also tendered Jordan Mason. This one's interesting, though. There is some rumors that Jordan Mason may get traded, and this is totally a possibility. So you hear that they tendered Jordan Mason for a second round tender, which means that they've got to pay him at least $5.3 million. It also pretty much guarantees that no team is going to offer Jordan Mason a contract because they don't want to give up a second round pick. But what it also opens up is the possibility for a couple things. One, it opens up the possibility for a long-term deal. Nobody's really talking about that. They can certainly do that. In fact, that's what happened with Jennings last year. He signed his tender eventually. They worked out a 2-year deal instead of a 1-year deal. And that's why Jawan Jennings is back with the 49ers this year, is because of that tender. Jordan Mason, the same thing. They can work out a multi-year deal because now he's essentially on the 49ers, assuming nobody's going to offer him. And that has not happened, and it's not going to happen. But what it also does is it means the 49ers have retained his rights. So they can trade him, and they don't have to trade him for a second round pick. They can trade him for a fifth round pick. As long as that team is willing to pick up his contract at $5.3 million. And quite frankly, that team doesn't have to have a $5.3 million contract. They can work out a 3-year deal with Jordan Mason, and they can rework the deal. So it's not set in stone that his contract's going to be $5.3 million. It's not set in stone he's only going to be on a 1-year deal. It's not set in stone he's even going to be a 49er. There is so many possibilities that have opened up because of this tender, and we'll see what happens with him. Jordan Mason, to me, I've always liked Jordan Mason. I think we saw the flashes last year. He is a good player. He can be effective in this league. He can be effective in this system. Kyle Shanahan doesn't seem as fond, though, for whatever reason. I think 2 years ago he was justified. Jordan Mason wasn't the best receiver out of the backfield. Jordan Mason got lost in his assignments. You saw it pretty often, actually. If you went to training camp, I was at training camp 2 years ago. He ran the wrong routes pretty often. And the reason you could tell he ran the wrong routes is because the quarterbacks, not just one, but every quarterback, and at that time they had Trey Lance, they had Brock Purdy, they had Sam Darnold. All three of them, when Jordan Mason was in the game, they would throw to one spot and he would be in another. It happened pretty often. So it was clear that this was a Jordan Mason not knowing his assignment issue. And so you wonder, all right, as the season goes on, clearly he's a talented player. Why is he not getting on the field? Well, those are the reasons. But Jordan Mason worked on all that this last offseason. He got really good as a pass catcher, very shorthanded. He learned his assignments. He got better on the mental side of the game. He came in and crushed it for the early portion of the season. And then the moment that CMC came back, he got zero burn and was seemingly just not on this roster. CMC gets hurt. He comes back. He gets hurt. Season over. I can see a scenario where Jordan Mason doesn't want to be here. And to me, it's clear that maybe Kyle Shanahan doesn't want him here. So him getting traded, I think that there is a real possibility of that. But we'll have to keep our eyes peeled. Kevin Givens also comes back on a new agreement as well. And then the big thing is the 49ers have $86 million in dead cap. But they still have cap space to go make some signings for sure. So the question of the day, now that we've gone through everything, is there reason for panic? I think a lot of 49er fans, I've really seen it, are like, what are we doing? They were 6-11 last year. This is a team that has their Super Bowl or has a Super Bowl in their backyard, and they're not even going to compete. What is going on? And I look at this a little bit differently. I look at it and say, in my opinion, Kyle Shanahan's a top 7-8 coach in this league. Some people think he's better. Some people think he's top 3. Well, to those people that think he's top 3, hell, even if you think he's top 7 like I do, you probably should think he can coach his way out of this. Pretty much everybody universally agrees that Robert Saleh is a major upgrade over what they've had at defensive coordinator the last couple of years. Robert Saleh may not have been or has not shown to this point that he's a really good head coach. But we know Robert Saleh can coach his butt off when it comes to defense. We know he's one of the better defensive coordinators in this league. Probably top 5 at the very least, maybe top 4, top 3, what have you, depending on what you think of some of the other guys out there, the Fangios, the Schwartz, the Spagnuolos, what have you. But he's up there. He's in the conversation. So you know that the defense is going to be as good as it can be because Robert Saleh is here. They hire a new special teams coordinator, a good one, in Brant Boyer. Clearly, he's making changes. Just got rid of the long snapper, right? Brought in a new one. So that's an area that you can now trust. The coaching staff is the best that it's been in 3 years. Well, if you trust this coaching staff and you know that the 49ers aren't void of talent, it's not like they have no talent. They still have 5 former All-Pros on this roster. They still have young players like Deommodore Lenoir, Brock Purdy, Dominic Pooney, Renardo Green, Malik Mustafa, Jawan Jennings, Ricky Pearsall, Jordan Mason for now. We'll see what happens with Jordan Mason. But and they have a whole draft ahead of them. They're not void of talent. The 49ers have just come back to the pack. We're so used to the 49ers being arguably the most talented team in the league that all of a sudden we freak out. And by the way, I haven't even mentioned Brandon Ayuk, who will be playing this season. He will be healthy at some point, and as long as he doesn't get traded, he will be on this roster. So there are good players on this team. And once we go through the draft, there's going to be guys that we're really excited about. They may not be the most talented team in the league anymore, but they have enough talent to compete. They're going to be in these games. They're not going to be getting stomped out game in and game out and blown out by these teams. Like, they're going to be a competitive team. They're going to have to learn to win these close games. I totally understand that. But when you have a coaching staff that we all agree is a really, really good coaching staff, and you have talent at that level, the expectation shouldn't change. You're not in the hardest division. You don't have the hardest schedule ahead of you. Don't panic. No, this team is not going to win a Super Bowl next year. And if they do, that would be miraculous. I'm not saying you should expect a Super Bowl, but what you should expect is playoffs. This team can absolutely be a playoff team. And you should be excited about the future of this team because going into next year, the 49ers are going to have like 80 to 100 million, depending on how they play this thing in cap space. They're going to be big time players next year. And I don't think Jed York is tightening up the purse strings for forever. I think this is a one season thing until they can get back on track. So the future of this team seems bright. You got to be a little patient. I understand. Yes, I know we expect Super Bowls around here and playoffs aren't good enough. I get all of that. But the 49ers aren't going to be awful next year. They have enough talent, they have the coaching. Don't panic. It's going to be all right.